Gerard and Rhino in the SuperTalk Studios, middays back with you. We've got Andy Berry, the Executive Vice President of the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association and the Mississippi Beef Council. Morning, Andy. Always good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning. Good to be here.
All right, so first let's get an update on what's going on in the industry. I don't know that the industry has ever been in as much focus as it has been in the last several months simply because of this phenomenon of inflation, which is absolutely rippling through all segments of our economy, all goods and services. And, of course, everybody's got to have food. Can't live without that. They go to the grocery store and they're seeing beef prices spike up.
You know, we've got to continue to fuel our body regardless of what's going on in the inflation. And you stole the words right out of my mouth. It's inflation across the board on all products. I was looking at Consumer Price Index this morning before I came up here. Everything's up.
Yeah.
I mean, beef, there's no doubt. If you've been in the grocery store, beef prices have risen. The latest numbers are from December 2021. When you look at the all fresh numbers, which is nothing frozen, everything fresh, be it ground or be it a steak or a roast or something like that. Ending December 2021, that price was $7.35 a pound across the board. Now that's 18% higher than it was in December of 2020, but it's about 3% lower than it was October of 21, which was the peak. So while it's high, we're starting to see it maybe come down a little bit, but we're still having issues in our plants, getting these cattle processed, getting it shipped out. I get calls pretty regularly about concerns of availability of beef, and there's no shortage of beef. We're just having labor issues of getting those products manufactured.
Do you feel like that's the root cause of the spike in prices? Is it because of labor shortages?
There's a lot of that. I think probably the main factor of that is the monopoly that we have in the beef packing sector. There's 4 companies, major companies that handle upwards of 80% of the beef processing in this country. So there's not much way to spread that out across these smaller processors. So 4 companies control the majority of the beef in this country.
Well, so then, Andy, is it accurate to say then that the inflation is driven at that point in the supply chain, that the producers themselves, the cattlemen themselves that are selling the beef to the processors, and that there's just some huge increase there applying on top of that?
Absolutely. We right now, we're currently experiencing probably the lowest levels in history of the percent of retail price to what our producers get for live cattle.
Okay.
So there's a greater spread than we've ever seen before from live cattle prices to actual beef prices, what's called the cutout value. And that's just a result, one, we're oversupplied with live cattle. But then it also goes back to there's a bottleneck in those 4 processing plants. Mm-hmm. They can control the flow, or 4 processors, not the plants. There's more than 4 plants. But they can control the flow. And you couple that with the labor issues, with the COVID challenges that we've had, and they're doing about the best they can to get that beef processed, but there's a bottleneck there when it gets to the packing facilities.
All right, so the Biden administration has said as much. I mean, that's been their contention, is that we are kind of limited to these 4 processors, multiple plants, as you indicated, but 4 companies. So, but that sort of begs the question, well, if they have that sort of leverage because there's a limited number of processors, why weren't they doing the same prior to this whole COVID uprooting of the economy?
That's a good question. And I think that the Biden administration's plan to, put some money out there for small and regional packers is a good plan. But it's also kind of some low-hanging fruit for them to claim a victory on during this pandemic time with this inflation that we've had. So it's a welcome sight. It's going to take a while for that to make a dent. But that time, we have what's called a 10-year cattle cycle. So roughly every 10 years, you have a peak in cow numbers out in the fields, out in the pastures. Then that translates to a oversupply coming to the packing houses. So due to droughts and other factors, retirements across the country, those numbers are starting to get back into what we call the cattle producers' favor, where those processors are going to be undersupplied with cattle. And so hopefully we're going to see some better prices going forward. But right now we're taking it on the chin.
Okay. Well, so it seems to me like that the four. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and they have a command of the market, but it seems like there would be some competition amongst the four. Are they? I mean, they're not engaging in illegal corroboration, are they? Because you certainly can't do that.
Well, I certainly can't prove that.
I know
That's certainly been suggested across our industry. And look, there's some legislation out there that we've supported. Senator Hyde-Smith is a champion on that. That mandates kind of how these packers buy cattle, that they do a competitive bid. Right now, there's a lot of what we call alternate market agreements where, we're just going to buy this for a certain formula. And then so there's no cash trade, no auction, no competitive bidding amongst those four packers. So each of those four packers kind of have their own sweetheart deals with these different suppliers of cattle. So there's not a lot of incentive for them to bid up the prices.
I got you. Is there also kind of a regional or a geographic component to this as well, where a processor kind of services it with their various plants, services a region, and the others don't enter into it?
Not as much, but we have some regionality within our industry.
Okay.
And we've spoken before. Here in Mississippi, we have the factory. We have the mama cow. We produce the calf.
Yeah.
We'll kind of put them in from elementary. We'll put them in junior high school. We'll put them out on grass once we've weaned them from the mother.
Yeah.
When they go to senior high school, towards the end of the cycle, they're going to a feed yard in the Midwest. That's where also all the packing facilities are located at.
Yeah.
That's due to climate, some environmental factors of why that's done, closer to grain. And so, the last two stages, high school and college, before they ship off to become a nice tasty steak, when they graduate, so to speak, is in the Midwest. So, so there's a lot of concentration out in the Midwest part of the country. And we saw that one of the factors that led to some supply issues at the start of the pandemic in, 2020, was just because we couldn't get the products back from those processing facilities to the different ports across the country, just transportation issues, logistic issues.
What's the outlook?
For the cattle producers, that looks good for the next few years. Every economist that you talk to, like I said, that supply number is going to get back in the cattlemen's favor. It'll also lead to some higher prices of beef, but we've been very fortunate. We've done a great job of producing a high-quality product. We've got some innovation in packaging, and pre-seasoned and trimmed products that, years ago you'd go to the butcher and buy a steak and you'd have to take it home and do a little trimming to that product. Now, you can take it out of the chub, rinse it off. It can go on the grill or any, pre-made packages, patties. So we've done a good job of innovating, having a good product ready to eat for our consumers. So, we've enjoyed great demand with beef products, not to mention the nutritional value that we bring to the table.
Sure. But this spike in inflation that you're right, we're scheduled to get a new CPI number tomorrow, and most economists are predicting we're looking at 7.1, 7.3% annualized inflation. Where's that going to start to level off, do you think, in your industry particular?
I don't know. It's very concerning for our producers out across the state because we're seeing the input prices rise, and what we haven't seen yet, we've seen a small rise in our cattle prices, and we've got some hope for some better prices down the road. We just haven't realized that relative to the input prices, and then also comparative to what the finished product of the beef is. So we're kind of in a tight right now in terms of what it's costing us to produce that product relative to what it's worth at the end, compared to what we get for that.
Are you seeing any consumer response yet where consumers are saying, I just can't afford that, or maybe they're changing the grade of product they're buying?
So, all across the nation, we've seen strong demand. We've seen strong demand domestically as well as exports.
Okay.
Exports was up, 40% year over year. So, we're seeing that number and the demand drive. I saw a report from Tyson this morning saying that the consumers are wanting the product so much that they can't keep up with production to provide that product. So, I think that speaks fairly highly of what we're producing out here.
Sure.
Our cattlemen do a great job, but it's just getting that value back to our producers is a challenge.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how all these dynamics play out. And got just a couple of seconds here. How about your folks here in the state of Mississippi, your members? They doing well?
Doing well. Again, we're struggling with hiring inputs. We're producing a good product, appreciate everybody's support. You know, beef is what's for dinner. You can also eat it for breakfast and supper.
And they're a pretty resilient group. I know they are, and we appreciate them being part of the Mississippi economy. Thanks for coming on, Andy. Really appreciate it. Yep.
Yes, sir.
We'll be back with more Middays. We got